Hi, and welcome to the lesson dedicated to the first and the second step of our method, which is related to the framing and the light balance. This is the result that we will get at the end of this lesson, which is just the right balance between the various components of light that draw the scene. In fact, even in this case, we will refer to the classical hierarchy of lights that probably you already studied in the training number 1, 70s style. The hierarchy light always includes 3 components: first light, secondary light, and field light. In this scene, the first light consists of the external and internal lamp lights that create the shadows. As you can see, these lights create the main shadows, since these are the stronger lights that we have. Note that parts of the exterior are not illuminated by these lights, and the other interior areas remain slightly in shadow. So we need more lights to complete the scene. First, we need a secondary light, which is the ambient light. This is the reason for which the architectural pictures are taken at dusk, to take advantage of the light of the end of the day, which is very delicate and soft and can be used to brighten the outer parts of buildings. Finally, we have a field light, even lighter. We need to cover that areas that we saw earlier was still slightly dark. I want to emphasize that the hierarchy of lights is not typical of interior or exterior or studio light. It's not about the type of scene. It is about the shape of the image. It's about the ability to shape a scene using the lights. So it's an universal approach that is always correct. Okay, let's start with step 1 by analyzing our shot. We choose to frame the side of our house, and this will be the final shot with a wide angle 18 millimeters. Of course, I can increase the focal length to reduce the perspective effect. As you can see, the field captured is also reduced, so I have to move back slightly to fit in everything correctly. But as you can see, the house seems to flatten out, and the effect is not very nice. Probably a longer focal length is fine to frame the front of the building, but from our point of view, effect gets better with a wide angle. But the real question is, why the wide angle effect is so interesting? What attracts us to this? Even if we don't know it consciously, our subconscious is attracted to something called dynamic tension. These lines seem to diverge so strongly. They want to quit out the scene, and this creates a dynamic image that gives a sense of pleasure. And we in fact use the wide angle just to emphasize even more the dynamic tension created by these lines. And of course, especially when we use a wide angle, we must not forget to correct the vertical lines by clicking the button Vertical Shift. To complete the step 1, let's see how to set the exposure of the V-Ray physical camera. In situations such as this, I mean in the exterior night, we will set as a standard approach of the method 5SRW the shutter speed to 10, that is a value consistent with the reality, since in this case we are in low light conditions. Finally, given that we have light sources near to the walls, and this could create some problem for our image, we will use the color mapping exponential instead of linear, so as to avoid a large overexposed area on these walls. Well, let's start to create our light balance. In this file, I have included lamps, spotlights, and the V-Ray physical camera. And each object has its own default value. Basically, if you render, you cannot see almost nothing. The only materials that I have included are the material of glass for the windows and self-illuminating material for light sources. Our task now is to work to create a precise hierarchy between the various components of light. So let's start with our primary lights. Basically, when we see this type of lighting, we always think that is an IS light. And in fact, we used those kind of lights in Blue Villa training. But actually, there are a number of ways to simulate this effect. In this case, I'll use a simple V-Ray light as a substitute that you already know because I mentioned it in the previous training. So go to front view, set the V-Ray light as a substitute, and see how looks a 100 watts lamp. To create the cone of light, we can limit the lateral dispersion of light by changing the directional option. By default, its value is 0, and in this case behaves like a regular V-Ray light, emitting light at 180 degrees. If we increase this value, we'll simulate the effect of side flaps. 0.2, 0.5 already shows a light very close to the light we intended to simulate. So we can use an IS, but we can also take advantage of the directional parameter of a common V-Ray light plane. Go to our camera view and see the final effect. Okay, and now turn on the lamp inside, which is a regular V-Ray light, 200 watts also for this light. $500. Okay, it's fine now. Turn off the primary lights and let's start working with the secondary light, which is the ambient light. To simulate it, I use a V-Ray light dome type. You can place it anywhere in the scene, and the first thing to do is click on the texture slot to put in the V-Ray sky map. There's no problem because V-Ray sky map can be safely used also without V-Ray sun. Let's see the effect. Its default value, 1.0, seems very high. Let us remember that it's a secondary light and is more delicate than the primary light, and it serves just to lighten the shadows. We can lower to 0.5, 0.05, .03 seems okay. When using V-Ray dome light, we can easily get some strange effect on the horizon, a black line and sometimes a white line. The problem is that the object ground does not cover the surface to the horizon. A very simple way to solve this problem is to raise the floor in the distance, as a small hill. Activating Show Horizon in wireframe mode, we can see exactly how much to raise these polygons. Turn off the secondary light and create a very soft light in this area. As we have seen, was still a little bit darker. This is the fill light. $60 is okay. It's important that it's a very soft light, and since we need it only to fill, we can also enable Store with Irradiance Map feature. In this way, we will save a little time on the calculation, producing less detailed shadows. Thing that we are not interested in with these lamps, since they are not important for the definition of the shape. In fact, these lamps are at the end of the hierarchy. Now turn on every light and complete the light balance by adding a chromatic contrast. First, we can use a trick also used in photography to create a coldest night scenarios, balancing the camera on a warm temperature. This action subtracts warm colors, and the entire image becomes colder. Go to the very physical camera, in white balance select temperature, and set a value less than 5000. 4500 seems good. As you can see, the image has become colder. Now create the primary warm light to enhance the color contrast. $3,500. $3,000. Okay, and for the fill lights, choose a color temperature almost neutral. In this case, 4500 is good. To complete this task, enhance the contrast using an S-curve, especially emphasizing the dark tones that makes the night renders a lot more interesting. Well, this lesson on the light balance ends here, but you can continue studying performing the exercise at the bottom. Download and open the max file and carry out the exercise as indicated.